In half an hour, EastEnders, but first, tonight's edition of Inside Out London.
Hello there, I'm Matthew Wright, you're watching Inside Out London. Here's what's coming up on tonight's show. Shipped out of London, why vulnerable kids are being forced into care homes miles from where they've grown up.
It's far too easy for particularly the London boroughs to dump their children, and that's the only word I can use for it, in Thanet.
Half built and almost empty, we investigate how the recession has halted the capital's skyscraper boom.
It seems that they gather enough money to build one floor at a time. It's like the okey cokey for workers. They're in, they're out, they're in, they're out.
And we meet the man who's revived his childhood marching band to inspire today's youngsters.
I'm trying to really give them a sense of belonging. I'm trying to teach them old values that actually mean something today.
Finding the money and resources to look after the capital's 10,000 or so children living in local authority care is a tall order, particularly in an era of cuts. And so London councils, particularly the inner boroughs, are moving some of the kids to care homes outside the capital. In fact, more than 1 in 5 of the capital's most vulnerable children are relocated more than 20 miles away from their original neighbourhoods, with many ending up in seaside towns like Margate in Kent. But what impact does this have on the kids and on the communities they're moved to? Rachel Royce has the story.
Margate is one of Britain's seaside towns that was once famous for its tourism and theme park. These days it's becoming more of a cultural destination. But like some other towns in Kent, it's also a getaway for children in the care system. Traditionally, children were sent here from deprived parts of London for the sea air. These days they come for foster care and to specialist children's homes. There are around 1,200 children in Kent sent here from other local authorities.
For the children moving here from London, those distances are a gulf. Moving to the coast means leaving behind familiar routes, friends, family and school.
Basically, I was moved from a turbulent background with my birth mother from London, which culminated me first of all moving to Whitstable, which then, because I was abused by my foster care in Whitstable, I got moved further down south to the southeast to here in Margate.
So this is actually where your children's home used to be?
KJ had to move away because he was escaping from a fraught childhood. But for others who make the transition from London to the coast, it can be a traumatic uprooting. Drew Ryan was born in Thurrock, where he lived with his mother and sisters. He remembers vividly the day he was taken away at the age of 8 from London to the coast.
Me and my sister were literally taken actually to the car. We were told to get in the car. We had no idea what it was about. It was literally kidnapping. It was literally, we were going and we had no idea what was going on. It was just shocking really.
Drew found it an alienating experience to be torn from his London home.
Everyone that I knew, and obviously I still had my family at the time, I literally was ripped away from. So where I went to, I obviously had to build up new friends, and I did that, but once again I was also moved again from there, and then after that I was moved again. So I literally had no backbone of friends that I could always turn to.
Drew's experience is far from unique. Stephen Lucy was another child born in Thurrock. After initially being placed locally, he was separated from his older brother and sent away to Kent.
It was hard because you're always having to make new friends and meet new people, and you could never really attach yourself to anyone or anything because just you'd be getting detached to it because you'd be getting moved away again.
Stephen's unhappiness had disastrous consequences.
I ran away. I got into a lot of trouble with police.
What happened?
Just mainly fights. I had some of my ribs broken with a baseball bat.
Children in foster care often go to local schools like this, Hartsdown Technology College in Margate. 2 years ago, the head teacher, Andy Summers, took the unusual step of turning away some of these youngsters, saying the school could no longer cope with children from other authorities.
We just felt it was quite a cynical take that the local authorities in London were taking by placing children down here, stating that they thought they were going to be placed in a nice seaside town. Well, it's not quite like that. And one of the issues we've got here is that our social services are very, very stretched. And the social services come with the child. So if we get a child, say, from Haringey, then the social worker that works with that child has to come to all the meetings down in Cliftonville or in Margate. And it's just the distance is far too great.
The problem of giving children adequate care a long way from home can have other consequences.
I have known of children who have gone on the run and gone missing because they're so unhappy in their placement and they want to be back where their corporate parents are.
The government recently became so concerned about children missing from care, it commissioned an all-party parliamentary report into the issue. It took evidence on what happens when children are placed away.
If we place them outside an area that is familiar to them, of course the first thing they will do is run away, run back to their hometown or run back to people that they have known. So young people don't really like being placed out of familiar territory, and that predisposes them to run away and then of course places them at risk.
London sends the most children to Kent, yet each local authority has a duty to keep children in care as close to home as possible. So why is the capital sending its vulnerable youngsters away?
Enfield is one of the London boroughs that sends some of its children to Kent. The Director of Children's Services talks on behalf of all the London boroughs.
These are very vulnerable children who have a wide range of needs. Often those needs can be specialist needs, and to be frank, within London and within London boroughs there aren't always sufficient placements, there aren't sufficient specialist placements.
I've spoken to one of the boroughs that said literally they would need 4 times as many foster carers to cope with the demand. Is that a similar picture across London?
There is a shortage of foster carers. In terms of London, we're in discussion with the Mayor's office to launch yet another big fostering campaign that we hope will identify more fostering placements. And there are a shortage of specialist residential placements within London. And I think it's very true to say that all of London boroughs have a number of other authorities looked after children.
But according to Kent MP Roger Gale, a lack of suitable accommodation in London is not a good enough reason to send so many children to Kent.
Somehow we have to prevail upon local authorities to make provision for their own young people who are in need of care. There will always be a very few that for their own safety, because of the potential of violence, for example, have to be taken out of area. Kent sends a few young people out of Kent for that reason, and that's understood. But it's far too easy for particularly the London boroughs to dump their children, and that's the only word I can use for it, in Thanet, because it's easier and cheaper and it's out of the way and we don't have to bother with it, do we?
But ironically, children in care who have spent their childhood in an alien environment often find the situation reversed when they reach adulthood. When Drew left care, he found himself back where he came from, alone and suffering isolation once again.
Well, what they do, they obviously will send you back to be housed in London, which is something they have with the London Borough of Southwark. And effectively what will happen is you get given a house you have to bid for, and I did that and I got given one. And now, at the moment, I'm sort of struggling with you know, building up a new friends group, people that, you know, I'm just here alone, effectively.
KJ wants more choices for young people, including an option to stay put in a new area if the young person has settled there.
If you go with what these young people want and make sure that they're with positive influences in their life, then these people will become successful people, they will become successful. But if you move them away again, and they feel isolated, they think, and then they'll end up going to gang crime, they'll end up going and doing silly things, which will land them in prison.
The government has commissioned a special report into the placing of children in care away from their home area. It's expected to publish its findings in January. But for the moment, the London boroughs say they simply don't have enough room to look after their own.
Now then, still to come on tonight's show.
I'd like to get as many kids and as many families involved in this organisation so that they all benefit. There's less broken windows, there's less stolen cars, and the whole community has a chance to do something that's actually right for it.
The financial crisis hasn't just been hitting people in their pockets. Its effects can be seen around us on London's skyline. The financial turmoil, you see, has stalled the development of a number of iconic skyscrapers destined for the capital, including London's second tallest building, whilst floor after floor of completed office development is lying empty, unable to attract any tenants. So what does this mean for the capital? Maxwell Hutchinson went to find out.
They're fixing the cladding on the 14th floor of this skyscraper in the heart of the City of London. It's at number 20 Fenchurch Street. It's affectionately known as the Walkie-Talkie Building. This is the spectacular view from level 24.
We've got Lloyd's of London, the Swiss Re Tower, or the Gherkin.
The building is a stone's throw from the centre of the city insurance market, a rare bright spot in an otherwise depressed financial services sector.
Successful developments are all about timing and location.
Yes.
We're 200 yards from Lloyd's of London. It's a global insurance centre. It is a sector within London that is thriving. And we're benefiting from those businesses wanting to be located in 20 Fenchurch Street.
But just up the road, there's another site where building work has ground to a halt, a victim of the dark economic clouds hanging over the city. For months now, city workers have had to put up with this unsightly concrete block in Bishopsgate. People used to call this building the Helter Skelter because of its spiralling shape pointing skywards. Now it's just known as the Stump. This is where the pinnacle should be starting to soar majestically above us as the square mile's tallest structure. Work began here in 2008, just before the crash, when property building in London was booming. But in March, the project hit the financial buffers. Jerry Swain worked as a carpenter on a number of city developments before becoming an official in the Construction Workers Union.
The Pinnacle is perhaps the biggest example of this recession. It seems that they gather enough money to build one floor at a time. It's like the okey-cokey for workers. They're in, they're out, they're in, they're out. It's just unbelievable to watch that project. It has become farcical.
Architect Lee Polisano came up with the original Pinnacle design, while a partner in a previous practice, KPF.
What are your thoughts about the Pinnacle today?
Well, naturally, I'm disappointed that it hasn't been built, and it isn't being built, and that it won't be realized at this point in time. And I'm disappointed to see such an important piece of land in the city lying empty and with a small piece of building sticking up. I think that's not good for the city. It's not good. It's not a good message we should be delivering, and it certainly doesn't bode well for the delivery of the Pinnacle.
This spectacular model shows that the Pinnacle isn't the only big development project with a question mark hanging over its future. Peter Murray is the chairman of London's Centre for the Built Environment.
Well, you have here the Pinnacle, which is the tallest building in the cluster. The 100 Bishopsgate here, which is the much squarer building, they're digging the foundations, but they won't start building until they have somebody who actually wants to rent the space from them. This one here, which is called the Trinity, that was money loaned by Irish banks, and unfortunately they went under in the recession. And so instead of the Trinity, we're going to get the office building on the site refurbished to turn into a hotel.
And what about this one here?
Well, this building here was actually going to be about this high, and the developers felt that actually in the current market, a lower building but a bigger floor plate was probably a better bet. All cities reflect the cycles of development. And one of the interesting things about tall buildings is that they tend to take a little bit longer than the cycles. So to a certain extent, what we see here is a trace of the pre-economic downturn city.
Part of the problem is that these huge, complex projects can take years to get off the drawing board. They're often dreamt up in good times, but find themselves being completed in bad times.
This has a human consequence for individuals who work in the industry. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that people are earning 20% less than what they were in 2007, 2008. Unfortunately, concrete is costing the same. Steel has possibly gone up, so where the savings are made are in the cost of labour.
In the boom years, it was the banks that came up with much of the cash to develop these projects, and it was assumed that tenants would come flocking. The credit crunch has hardened attitudes to that kind of risk. Simon Rawlinson is a leading property development consultant.
We've recently completed some research which suggested that in terms of bankers' willingness to lend now has declined over the past year. They expect that lending will get easier over the next 3 or 4 years, but the issue is, well, how do you get buildings off the ground now in anticipation that people want that space in 2 or 3 years' time?
And the recession is making businesses think twice about moving offices, putting extra pressure on developers' finances.
How difficult is it to find tenants for these buildings?
There are examples of projects which have been cancelled or delayed in the past 12 months because where they thought they had a pre-let and that fell away, and those projects then had to at least be mothballed for the time being.
The competition for those all-important tenants is especially intense because of the huge amount of high-quality office space that's already lying vacant.
Well, you have the Shard, which they've leased the hotel space, which is the bit in the middle, but the office space they're looking for tenants. Then you have the building down the Baby Shard, that's looking for people to come in and take space. Then you have the Walbrook in the centre there, and also Cannon Place, which was built over Cannon Street Station. Both those are looking for tenants at the moment.
What are the financial implications of this office space lying empty?
Well, for the developer, very painful, really. But I've seen 4 recessions during my career, and I think in each one, I've heard people say, look at all this empty office space, why do we need it? And after each one, as the economy has improved, it's become occupied, and it's an important part of a healthy city to have some empty space.
So given that we're in the economic doldrums, how might London's skyline evolve over the coming years?
I think we're going to see the current projects completed. We know that there are 1 or 2 additional quite large projects coming through, but I will be very surprised if we see another crop of new skyscrapers other than the ones that we know are already in the planning process.
In the long term, I'm very optimistic about the city, because the city has shown throughout history that it is able to deal with pestilence, bombing, blitzes, fires, all those things, and it bounces back.
The big question is how long developers will have to hold their nerve before the boom times return.
As every parent knows all too well, keeping children entertained and engaged can be a massive headache. And we all know how troublesome kids can be when they get bored and unmotivated. Well, one man from Essex had a brainwave. He decided to revive a tradition from his own childhood and give local youngsters a chance to play in a marching band. South Ockendon in Thurrock has a huge council estate, and it was once a very desirable place to grow up. But the planners never really thought about giving young people much to do. So bored teenagers just hung around and caused the odd bit of trouble. One man who grew up there but worked away for years came back to find that some had been throwing stones at his elderly mum and dad's home, making their lives a misery.
Now, I caught a couple of them. I basically did nothing more than talk to them. I got a barrage of abuse, as you can imagine, from the little kids. But they're only like 13 and 14-year-old boys. They weren't, old teenagers, as I would consider teenagers. And the bottom line after those discussions they were bored. They had nothing to do at all. And just a light bulb went on in my head.
Paul remembered his youth and being part of a local marching band that broke up over 20 years ago. A couple of phone calls to old band members, a post on Facebook, and help from local schools, and...
She's the drum major and I play the trumpet. I play drums. Trumpet. I've been trying brass and I've stuck with brass because I find it more fun.
Paul bought a load of instruments and Thurrock Marching Brass was up and marching again. But these little angels are clearly not surly, stone-throwing youths. But Paul is aware that given a few years of boredom and hanging around on the street, even nice kids like these can become a problem as they grow up.
I'm trying to teach them old values that actually mean something today. The old traditional values of knowing what's right and wrong and how to behave socially.
Although today's band are some of the brightest, cheekiest kids you could ever wish to meet, Paul deliberately includes those dealing with the difficult issues of today.
We're dealing with social challenges where parents have, literally on the breadline. We're dealing with people that have got Asperger's. We've got retention issues, speech impediments. We're dealing with people that have got some severe handicaps.
The band range from 6 years of age to 15, and even at this early stage are preparing for the national championships. They're being taught by members of the original band.
All of us have had marching band experience, and some of us have actually been teaching instruments, brass, dance, etc. for many, many years. Right back from day one, we started them off basic marching, all of the drill movements, posture, instrument positions, basic techniques on whatever instruments they've decided to play.
We offer music theory classes. You're dealing with crotchets and quavers, which are different note values that can have an offshoot. You can get better at maths by doing that, and you're giving them sort of different Italian words which are associated with music, so they're learning languages, and it's just, there's so much you can get from music.
We come here on Mondays, Tuesdays. Not Tuesdays. Okay. Mondays, Wednesdays and Sundays till yes. It's a lot of learning and it's fun to play music as a group.
Before we didn't really know what to do with the instruments.
We didn't know what they were.
Yeah. And then the instructors just taught us the basics and then we learnt more and more as we went along.
Introducing music to the ages and the kids that we've got is a big thing.
5, 6, 7, 8.
A lot of kids wouldn't have that chance in schools. It's not accessible for a lot of people.
All this costs their parents just £4 a week. In today's economic climate, schools rarely offer anything like it.
The government's cut in music programmes. I think the decision to cut that is taken by people that really don't appreciate what that means. I think they're looking at a bottom line number, but I've seen the benefit that music gives kids and the benefit it gives them in other areas of their social environment and their other lives that is just so far outweighing the cost of what they're saving. It's a silly thing.
The last thing on the youngsters' minds, though, are government cuts. They've got a show to prepare for, and this is their final rehearsal.
The show starts with a telephone ringing, and then it's like an old London person saying, hello, this is London, answering the phone. Then he hangs up, then we start showing. It could go wrong, I have to turn the amp on, I have to make sure the iPod's working and stuff, because if it goes wrong, they're just going to be standing there staring at me.
A fear of it all going wrong, this lot hardly seem bothered as they travel to the big competition. And it's hardly surprising when they know of their band's once glorious past.
It was a huge machine that basically, from the beginning of 1980 to November 1982, didn't lose a single competition it entered. We've played for Her Majesty the Queen. We've got 4 gold medals for World Championships as well.
This year's national championships were held at Keys Stadium, Cannock, and some of the best bands in the country were there. So performing amongst such company must surely be terrifying for Thurrock's youngsters.
I'm nervous. I'm confident. I'm nervous. I'm both. Nervous. I'm not well.
They didn't have the best of starts. Poppy's greatest fear transpired. Her phone didn't ring, but she and the band quickly got into their stride. Their performance went from strength to strength, and against much more experienced opposition, they actually finished runners-up and even won first prize for music effect.
The speed at which they've picked up the music, they've only been playing for a year and they've already learnt 5 numbers, and there's this whole community thing where the band goes on a coach together to competitions, and it's not just being in that small unit, you're also meeting other bands from all over the country.
To see what these guys have done in the first 2 years of the reformation of Thurrock Marching Brass has just amazed me, and I'd like to get back into the sort of top sections, shall we say, the competition classes within 4 or 5 years.
Big hopes for the future then. But for Paul, the band performed a very symbolic act. This time, not kids throwing stones outside his mum and dad's house, but a march past by his pride and joy.
My goal is to get as many kids as I possibly can through our doors. We can cater for at least 100 now. But I'd like to get as many kids and as many families involved in this organisation so that they all benefit in this community. There's less broken windows, there's less stolen cars, and the whole community has a chance to do something that's actually right for it. Everybody wins.
Well, that's nearly all for this evening. But before we go, let's have a quick look at what's coming up on next week's programme. We expose how super wealthy criminals are exploiting the system to claim millions in legal aid.
It does rather stick in the craw that very wealthy defendants in criminal cases who could afford to pay for their own representation are getting legal aid, and other people who have housing difficulties or welfare difficulties are being told, too bad, you're on your own.
We find out what the future holds for thousands of disabled workers laid off from government factories.
We want to let them know that we're not going away. That's what they was hoping. They was hoping that, oh, that's it, paid them off, bump one up, gone.
And why being lonely in London can be seriously bad for your health.
I think London, because there's so much out there that's available in terms of sociability and entertainment and interest, you can have a tremendous high, but you can also have a tremendous low.
And that's about it from this week's Inside Out London. If you've missed any of tonight's show, you can catch up on the iPlayer. Just head to our website. The address is bbc.co.uk/Inside Out and then click on London. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you again next week.